It's my pleasure to welcome you to another episode of A Chat with ESV Olalekan Aboderin. My name is Oluwafemi Sanusi. As we know, this is a publication of REST, otherwise known as Real Estate Services and Transactions. In the house, we have, of course, ESV Olalekan Aboderin, who is the lead advisor of Olalekan Aboderin Consulting, a firm of estate surveyors and valuers. He's also the Director of Studies of Reals Academy Limited, a professional real estate development center here in Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you, sir, for joining us for yet another episode.
Thank you, Femi. Yes, it's my pleasure.
And we have a very interesting topic today, titled "Buying Property of a Deceased Individual." So, quite a number of people are faced with this kind of transactions, and they usually try to find out, okay, now that the owner of this property is no more, is it safe for me to buy this property, etc., etc. So my first question is, normally a person can, before he died, he might have a will, and in some other instances he might not have a will. So the first thing we're going to talk about is when the person died with a will, how do you go ahead to buy such kind of property?
Thank you so much. That's very simple. When the person died, death is a normal thing. Everybody will have come and we will die one day. So, if there is a will, what that means is that it's not a property of a deceased anymore. Very simple. Because with that last testament, the person had granted in his will that the property should be inherited by some people, either one or two people. There must have been beneficiaries stated in the will.
Okay.
It then means that the moment the person dies, his rights ceases.
Okay.
Right? He has bequeathed that property to somebody else by virtue of his will.
Okay.
That the right in that land becomes vested in that individual.
Okay.
So what only needs to be done is for the will to be administered.
Okay.
When that is done, the ownership that the deceased had during his lifetime now becomes vested in the person to whom he has bequeathed the property.
Okay.
So take for example, let's say the deceased says Green Acre to O.T. John.
Okay.
O.T. John is of no person's name here.
Okay.
To O.T. John. Green Acre to O.T. John. In his will. The moment he dies, his right ceases as he has the last breath. His right ceases. And the rights of O.T. John start running. The only thing to buy safe is for that will to be administered, and with that, by virtue of that will, O.T. John reserves the right. He is not the owner. He reserves the right to alienate, to sell, to do anything, and he can sign deed of transfer, deed of assignment, deed of sales, or whatever, as if his father who had died. Okay? So where it is under will is seamless, is easier. However, a note of caution. O.T. John cannot inherit more than what his father had. Because there are a lot of stories here and there. Now people say, because he's not the new owner, he now has 99 years. It's a lie. It's what his father has that he has transferred by virtue of will to him. And that's the maximum he will have. So that's the only area of caution. So the moment the will is administered, O.T. John has the right, as if he's his father, to execute. He does not need to go and process title in his name. That his father's title, together with the administered will, that's it. And he will be able to execute, sell, and the buyer will be able to process, register his own title too in his own name. Okay? Right. So that is where it is underway.
Okay. So what then? So in the instance where the person then dies without a will, that dies intestate. So
that is where there could be a lot of issues. If one wants to buy property, it's very common, very, very common in our society.
Okay.
The moment somebody dies without a will, first of all, that property might likely take the shape or form of a family property.
Okay.
Because before he dies, he has not bequeathed that property to anybody.
Okay.
Hence, the property will subsist in his asset, in his estate. Right? So, if a buyer is to buy such property, there must be precautions. The primary thing is, number one, there must be authority to deal, authority to transact. This authority to deal or transact rests in what we call letter of administration. We mentioned it in our last episode. Letter of administration. The family must obtain letter of administration because there is no will. So with that letter of administration now, buyer can now buy such a property. So if there is a buyer is interested in a property of a deceased, where the deceased dies intestacy, the part of what the buyer should ask for is letter of administration. Now, there are cases, however, where letter of administration will not be issued.
Okay.
I mean, it's not yet ready.
Okay.
Family could lay claim to the fact that they have come together, they have a family meeting, and hence they have minutes of the meeting where they agree to sell the property. Or that they have family resolution where it was resolved that the property could be placed in the market and get sold. My emphasis here is that buyer should beware. Letter of meeting of minutes of meeting of family resolution do not it does not satisfy or take the place of letter of administration. This letter of administration becomes essential for them to be able to exercise authority in respect of the asset of a deceased.
Okay.
So now, but does that mean that such property cannot be bought? No. It's only that measures must be put in place.
Okay. Okay. So, like, I know you mentioned sometime about letter of administration, which gives an individual the right to be able to transact with respect to that property. So, I want you to just explain a bit more about the need of this letter of administration.
If an individual died and he died intestacy without will, he has created a vacuum. That vacuum is that he has not transferred the interest he has or he had in the property before he died into anybody.
Okay.
So, for transaction to be held in respect of those his estate, then it will require that they need authority to exercise these transactions.
Okay.
The instruments that will first that authority in the people to be nominated to carry out to exercise this authority, that instrument is the letter of administration.
Okay.
It's usually issued by probate in probate courts.
Okay.
And it has processes.
Okay.
The processes they are basically for lawyers to handle, and they handle that. Right? Meanwhile, it's the best for buyer to buy. Where there is no will, letter of administration must be procured. It's very, very essential. Now, when you have that letter of administration, the usual thing is that there will be administrators. It's not going to be just one person.
Okay.
Mostly, I think, is usually minimum of 2 people to serve as administrator. Now, those 2 people, the letter will be issued in their favor, and they have the right to now exercise rights of alienation of use of anything regarding the assets covered by that letter of administration. Now, but with that letter, when you have it, there won't be any problem if one buys such a property.
Okay.
Because with that letter, the buyer can obtain his own title too.
Okay.
But if that letter is not there, to obtain his own title will be a problem. So, that means that for a buyer, buying property of a deceased, he must emphasize having letter of administration. For example, again, when buying without letter of administration, family is more or less like an amorphous population.
Mm.
And that means that that property will be more or less like family property. So how will you ascertain who has the right to transact? How will you be able to ensure that your transaction is legal?
Mm.
So it's better to stay within the purview of law and ensure that letter of administration is obtained and that the property is buying, because there is no will, there is letter of administration for the administrator to exercise that says before buying. Otherwise, it will be a blind buyer. Because, for example, I mentioned about the population and the family. Assuming any of the family members challenged the sales, what happens if there is no letter of administration? So, precaution must be taken in that regard.
So, generally, sir, in terms of safety, because I mean, quite a number of people, when they want to buy property, they want to be sure that this is a safe transaction property to buy. So, I want you to just give a general summary of the safety tips for buying property.
That's a very big question. But okay, let's kick it off from here. Let's look at what are these measures, safety measures. Let's start from even the issue we are talking about, buying property of a deceased. What are the safety measures? The most serious area is where the guy had died without a will.
Okay.
And that is where letter of administration becomes necessary. So now the exposure or threat to the purchase will be where the letter is not readily available. So the buyer, number one, should emphasize the need for that letter of administration.
Okay.
But it does not mean he cannot proceed with the transaction.
Okay.
He will now proceed with the transaction conditionally.
Okay.
Conditionally. Meaning that he will make it part of the condition of sales to him for the letter to be obtained and procured.
Okay.
Now, part of his condition, because he's so interested in the property, he could decide to make part payments for the property, subject to contract of sales.
Okay.
Buyers, please be careful. We are not saying you want to buy a property of 100 million. You want to make part payment of maybe 20 million or even 10 million without such an agreement. No. It should be subject to contract of sales. And why will it be necessary to make part payment? It could be that the family does not have money to go and procure the
necessary.
the letter of administration. So by putting the family in an advantage by giving them part payment, will make it easier for them to procure the letter of administration. And buyers should equally know that the moment you give them that money, you have empowered them. I mean the family now. The moment they have that money, they can procure and obtain the letter of administration. The moment that letter of administration is obtained, as a matter of fact, the value of the property becomes enhanced. Because that exposure that buyers will want to run away from has been removed. Yeah. That's why there is need for contract of sales. Okay. That will be binding the two of them. So, and we define the conditions of the transaction. It will tie the hands of the family and ties the hands of the buyer too. So, it will not be a question of unfulfillment of certain conditions, what happens next. Maybe, for example, buyer is making down payments of how much, maybe 20%, 30% now. Then the family will initiate the processing of the letter of administration. It could be that if they are about to get it, another further payment may be made, or it is when they have obtained it, few days after the buyer must pay up. So that condition will be an agreement between the two of them. And upon that, the family will now execute deed of transfer, that's deed of assignment. Now, that is how to buy safe in this situation. Ensure one, that there is letter of administration. If it's not available, ensure you tie the family or the family of the deceased into an agreement to obtain that letter of administration. Then be ready to make part payment so that they can have resources to pursue it. Another side to it is that the buyer will say is going to buy, pay them fully, but remove the cost of letter of administration, and that is going to handle that procedure. The process of letter of administration on his own. His lawyer will do that. That's another approach.
Okay.
That's another approach. But it's safer to actually attach conditions and have a contract of sales. Now, for example, if the buyer is buying at a premium,
okay,
he knows he's making serious gain. Now, just to say, okay, let me pay you off, sign all necessary papers, sign all necessary forms, we will go and do the letter of administration. You know, so, but without letter of administration, there's no magic. You won't be able to obtain title in his own name.
okay.
I'm sorry, Femi. Don't forget your question. The question on safety, buying safe. I think we'll have to address that question in another episode.
Okay.
Because there are quite a lot of issues.
Okay.
What I just try to do is to limit the scope within our discussion today.
Okay.
But when it is an issue of buying safe,
Okay.
there are a lot of areas where buyers must be aware of.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, viewers. So please remember to follow us on all our social media handles, and for suggestions, feedbacks, and questions, please remember to send them to the information displayed. So with that, we'll come to the end of this episode. We will see you again next time. Bye bye from me.
Thank you.